The stars above the Viren Dominion glowed like silver scars in the dark sky. Their capital planet, Prime, was a world of shining towers and proud bloodlines. Every noble house there believed themselves superior to all other races, and none were prouder or crueler than the High Council. Inside the Grand Chamber, alien nobles sat around a circular table of crystal stone. Their faces were pale blue and ridged with silver veins that pulsed faintly under the light. At the center stood their Queen Arlana, dressed in a flowing robe that shimmered with soft violet hues. Her tall crown was gone. Her voice was quiet, heavy with shame. "You called me here to mock me again," she said softly. "I can feel it." Counselor Veller smiled with cold amusement. "No, Majesty. We called you here to give you purpose. Since the royal womb remains fruitless after all these years, perhaps your time is better spent representing us elsewhere." There were chuckles around the chamber. Arlana stood still, hiding the tremble in her hands. Her people measured worth by legacy, by the strength of one's offspring. She had ruled for 20 years but had borne no heir. The whispers behind her throne grew louder every season. Barren, unfit, unworthy. The council had found a way to humiliate her openly. Vela continued. "There is a small human colony on the edge of the Orion Remia 7. They call it a settlement. Harsh winds, poor soil, little technology, but they seem eager for cultural exchanges. We will send you there as a sign of ... goodwill." More laughter. One noble leaned forward. "A queen among farmers. How poetic." Arlana's voice was calm, but her heart burned. "You send me as punishment." "No," Vela replied, smiling thinly. "We send you as a symbol of our generosity. Think of it as an opportunity. If humans are as resourceful as they claim, perhaps they will fix what you cannot." That last sentence stung like venom. The queen said nothing more. She turned and left the chamber, her long robe trailing behind her like fading dignity. Outside, her personal guard tried to follow, but she lifted one hand and dismissed them. She wanted no witnesses to her humiliation in her private chambers. She removed her crown and placed it on the cold metal table. It no longer felt like hers. The mirror before her showed a tall woman with luminous eyes, but there was exhaustion behind them, the weight of 1,000 expectations. She pressed her fingers against the glass and whispered, "So this is how they erase me." 3 days later, the Royal Transport Valus departed Prime. Its passengers numbered only one, the exiled queen and a handful of diplomatic attendants who barely spoke to her. Outside the viewport, stars drifted by in silence. Arlana spent the journey staring into the void. Humans were said to be unpredictable, chaotic, emotional. Some called them dangerous. Others called them inspiring. She didn't care. To her, this was exile disguised as diplomacy. When her ship entered the orbit of EO7, she expected to see some glittering capital, perhaps a city dome like those of the Viren. Instead, she saw a dry planet, a golden-brown sphere wrapped in endless dust clouds. The surface below shimmered with sandstorms and dull rivers. Double quotes this. "Is where they live?" she murmured. The shuttle descended through the haze, shaking slightly as wind currents pushed against it. When the hatch finally opened, hot air hit her face like fire. The landing area was a flat plain of cracked soil and scattered metallic structures, small habitats built by hand. No guards, no servants. Only a few humans waiting by a landing pad. They wore dusty jackets, utility belts, and sun goggles. Among them stood a tall man with tanned skin and steady gray eyes. He stepped forward as she descended the ramp. "Welcome to EO7. I'm Captain Daniel Reeves, governor of this colony." Arlana blinked at him, surprised by the lack of ceremony. "You are the leader." He nodded and extended a hand. "That's what they call me. Though out here, everyone just does their share." The queen stared at his hand. Among the Viren, touching was reserved for close kin or sacred rituals. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. His grip was firm, warm, human. "Your people sent word you'd be staying for some time," Reeves said, his tone polite but not submissive. "We've prepared a place for you near the water fields. It's not a palace, but it's home. Arlana glanced around. The settlers were watching her, curious, not mocking. Children peeked from behind machinery. She expected stares of pity or fear, but instead saw simple interest. A young woman approached carrying a metal canister. "Ma'am, here's some water." "It's hot out today." Arlana hesitated. "You offer this freely?" The woman smiled. "Of course. Everyone shares here." It was strange. No one bowed. No one whispered titles. Yet no one laughed either. Her new home was a simple dwelling built from sandcrete and solar glass. Reeves personally showed her around, explaining how the solar panels collected energy and how the walls cooled during storms. "I apologize for the simplicity," he said. "Resources are tight." Arlana touched the wall, feeling its faint hum. "It is ... efficient. You build with purpose," he smiled. "That's all we can afford to do." For the first few weeks, she lived quietly. She spent mornings watching humans labor under the sun. They repaired broken solar rigs, carried water, laughed, and sang while working. Even when storms tore through their fields, they rebuilt without complaint. She found herself wondering what drove them, not fear. Not command, but something deeper. One evening, Reeves visited her with 2 cups of steaming liquid. "Tea," he said. "Human tradition. Helps during long days?" She studied the drink suspiciously. "It smells strange." He chuckled. "So do most good things at first." The warmth spread through her chest, soft and calming. "It is ... pleasant." Reeves sat across from her, elbows resting on his knees. "You've been quiet since you arrived. I know this isn't what you're used to." Arlana looked out the window. The sun set over at Yo 7, painted the sand in gold and crimson. "Where I come from, silence means survival. Here people talk freely. It confuses me." "That's because no one here is trying to control you," Reeves said. "Out here we survive together, or not at all." She turned to him, studying his face. "You speak without fear." "Out here fear wastes time," he smiled. "And we're short on that too." Weeks turned into months. Arlana began to walk through the colony more often. She helped in the water fields, using her biosense to detect underground moisture. Her alien knowledge improved the colony's output, and soon crops grew stronger. Humans began to smile when they saw her. Children brought her small stones painted with bright colors. One little girl named Mira followed her everywhere. "Miss Lana, can you make the plants grow faster?" she asked. Arlana knelt down and placed a hand on the soil. "Plants grow in their own time. We only guide them," Mira giggled. "You talk like my grandma." The queen almost smiled. "Then your grandmother must be wise." At night, Arlana sometimes stood outside, watching the settlers dance or share music around a small fire. Their laughter echoed under the stars. It was a sound unknown to her world, uncontrolled, warm, alive. Inside her chest, something began to stir. Not yet joy, but something close. One afternoon, a violent sandstorm struck the colony. The warning alarms blared as winds ripped through the plains. Reeves led the rescue teams. Running into the storm to secure the solar panels, Arlana stood near the shelter door, her heart pounding. She could barely see him through the dust, just a shadow against the golden chaos. "Governor," shouted one worker, "you'll get caught in that." Reeves waved them off. "If we lose the panels, we lose power for weeks. Keep the lines steady." Lightning flashed across the horizon, bright and close. Arlana couldn't look away. No noble on ViewerPrime would risk their life for commoners. Yet this man, this human, charged into death without hesitation. Hours later, when the storm passed, the colony was battered, but standing. Reeves stumbled back to the shelter, face covered in dust, eyes weary but alive. The people cheered. Arlana found herself stepping forward before she realized it. "You could have died," she said quietly. He shrugged. "So could everyone else. That's how it works." She looked at him for a long moment, then said softly, "You are ... strange." Reeves laughed. "You're not the first to say that." That night she couldn't sleep. The sound of the wind outside reminded her of the council's laughter, of the cold palaces she once called home. But something was different now. She didn't feel like a prisoner anymore. She felt ... free. She walked outside into the cool desert air. The stars above EO7 were brighter than on Vera Prime. She could see their soft blue light reflecting on the colony domes. From a nearby structure came laughter. Reeves and a few workers fixing a water valve under torchlight. He noticed her and waved. "Can't sleep either?" She hesitated, then approached. "I do not understand how you still laugh after storms destroy your homes." He tightened a bolt and looked up at her. "Because every storm passes, you either rebuild or you give up. And giving up's not really our style." His words lingered in her mind long after she returned to her quarters. Humans were strange, yes, but maybe that strangeness was strength. She stood before her mirror again. But this time her reflection didn't look broken. The lines of sorrow remained, but behind them, a spark, faint but real. Perhaps she whispered, "I am not erased yet." Outside, the wind carried faint human laughter across the desert, laughter that would soon reshape the fate of two worlds. The suns of EO7 rose early, painting the land in soft amber light. Dust shimmered on the horizon like golden mist. For most humans, it was just another hard day of labor. For Queen Arlana, it was another quiet morning, far from the life she once knew. It had been almost 5 months since her exile began. In that time, the alien queen had learned more about humanity than she had in all her years ruling the Barren Dominion. She learned how to use tools, how to repair pipes, and even how to plant seeds by hand. The woman who once gave royal orders now carried water and soil beside the colonists. Captain Daniel Reeves often worked with her. He never treated her as a queen or an exile, just another settler with work to do. He spoke to her about simple things, weather patterns, harvest predictions, and colony plans. His steady tone and patient nature had slowly erased the wall she built around her heart. One morning, as the colony prepared for planting season, Reeves noticed her standing near the fields. The wind tugged gently at her silver hair, and the faint light of twin suns made her skin glow faintly blue. She looked peaceful, but also lonely. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said, walking up beside her. Arlana nodded. "Your world is harsh. Yet life still grows." "That's humanity in one sentence," he replied with a smile. "Harsh world, stubborn life." She looked at him curiously. "Do all humans speak in riddles?" "Only when we're trying to sound wise," he joked. Her lips curved into a small smile, the first true one he had seen from her. Later that day, Arlana joined a group of colonists fixing damaged irrigation pipes. Her alien senses could detect the flow of water beneath the ground. She knelt, placed a hand on the soil, and said quietly, "There, it leaks 2 meters east." The crew dug at the spot and found the broken pipe exactly where she said it would be. One of the engineers whistled. "You've got some kind of magic, Miss Lana." Alana shook her head. "Not magic, just ... listening." From that day on, people began to ask her advice for everything: crops, soil, and even sickness. She became a quiet guide among them. Reeves noticed how the settlers treated her, not as an alien guest but as family. When he mentioned it one evening while sharing tea, she frowned slightly. "I do not understand why they accept me. I have given them little." Reeves leaned back in his chair. "You give them something, we all need: hope. They see you working with them. They see that you care. That's more than enough." No. She tilted her head. "Hope, you humans use that word often. It has no direct translation in my tongue. It's what keeps us going," he said. "When everything's broken and there's nothing left to fix, we hope. That's how we survive." Her gaze lingered on him for a moment. She didn't reply, but her heart stored that word like a treasure. Weeks passed. The bond between the queen and the captain grew stronger. They often worked side by side, sharing quiet conversations that slowly turned personal. One evening, as they walked by the water fields, Reeves said, "Back on Earth, before I came here, I was in the military. Fought in a few bad places. After that, I just wanted to build something that lasted. That's why I came to EO7. Arlana looked at him with soft curiosity. And did you find what you sought? He smiled faintly. Not yet. But maybe I'm getting closer. What about you? He asked gently. Why did you become queen? Her eyes clouded. I was chosen at birth. My bloodline was pure, my genetics perfect by Viren standards. But perfection became a prison. When I failed to bear an heir, they called me useless. Reeve stopped walking. That's cruel. It is tradition, she replied quietly. They believe a queen's worth lies in her ability to create life. I failed them, so they sent me away. To you, he looked at her with something that wasn't pity, it was respect. Then they're fools. I've seen what you can do. You've helped this colony more than any of their perfect rulers ever helped their own. Her voice trembled slightly. You speak as if I still matter. You do, he said simply. Here, everyone matters. For the first time in years, she felt warmth that wasn't from sunlight or duty. Not long after, tragedy struck. A massive sandstorm formed at the edge of the desert, heading straight toward the colony. The alarms wailed as settlers ran to secure the solar rigs and storage domes. Reeves ordered everyone inside, but some workers were still out repairing the western panels. I'll go get them. He shouted, grabbing his breathing mask. Arlana stepped forward. You cannot go out there. The winds will strip your skin. He fastened his gear anyway. If we leave them, they'll die. Before she could stop him, he dashed into the storm. The air howled with fury, sand hitting like knives. Arlana watched from the shelter window, her chest tightening with panic. Human shapes blurred in the swirling dust. Minutes felt like hours. She could sense his life force weakening, signal fading in the storm's chaos. Without thinking, she ran outside. The wind slammed into her, nearly throwing her off balance. Her robe whipped around her like a broken flag. She moved by instinct, following the faint hum of human life. Finally, she saw him, Reeves, half buried under debris. His oxygen mask cracked. Daniel, she shouted, pulling him free. He was unconscious, his pulse faint. She dragged him back through the storm, shielding his body with her own. Each step felt heavier than the last, but she refused to stop. Inside the shelter, medics rushed to help, but the instruments couldn't stabilize him. His heart was failing. Arlana pushed them aside. Leave him to me. Her palms glowed with faint silver light as she placed them over his chest. The energy field that defined all Viren began to flow through her hands. She had never used it this way. Transferring her own life energy to another species was forbidden, even dangerous. But she didn't care. Live, she whispered. You must live. The light grew brighter, wrapping around them both. The medics watched in awe as his breathing steadied and his heart monitor beeped again. Arlana collapsed beside him, weak and trembling. When Reeves opened his eyes hours later, she was sitting near him, pale and silent. You, saved me, he said hoarsely. She looked down. I broke the sacred laws of my kind. But yes. He smiled faintly. Remind me to thank you properly later. You should rest, she murmured. He caught her hand before she could leave. You risked your life for me. Why? Her voice trembled. Because you would have done the same. Their eyes met a long, wordless connection that neither could explain. Something had changed forever. Days turned into weeks again. Reeves recovered slowly, and the colony began to rebuild. But Arlana felt strange. Her body was changing. Small waves of warmth pulsed through her chest. Sometimes her vision blurred with flashes of light. At first, she thought it was a side effect of the life transfer. But then, she noticed something else. Her energy field, once dim and cold, now pulsed stronger every day. She kept this secret, afraid to tell even Reeves. But one night she went to the medical lab and asked the doctor to scan her. When the results appeared, the human doctor frowned. I don't understand this. Your energy readings are multiplying. There's growth, cellular division, DNA fusion. It's like your body's creating new life. Arlana's eyes widened. That cannot be. My womb was declared barren. The doctor looked again. Well, it isn't anymore. She left the lab in silence, her mind spinning. She walked out into the cool night, staring at the stars. For the first time in her long life, she felt something blooming inside her, fragile, possible, alive. When Reeves found her sitting outside the water fields, she looked distant. "Everything okay?" he asked. She turned to him slowly. "Humans change things they touch. Even the impossible." He frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" She didn't answer. Instead, she placed his hand gently on her chest, where a faint heartbeat pulsed, not her own rhythm, but something smaller, new. His eyes widened. "Arlana, is that—" She nodded. "Life inside me." He was speechless. "But how?" "I do not know," she whispered. "Your kind's energy, my essence, something merged when I saved you. My people said I was barren. They were wrong." Reeves sat beside her in stunned silence. The stars reflected in her silver eyes as she smiled softly. "Perhaps," she said, "this is what your word means, hope." From that day on, their lives changed. Arlana's condition grew stronger. The colony protected her like one of their own. She continued working when she could, but Reeves insisted she rest often. He even built a small garden near her home. It's filled with both human and Viren plants, a symbol of two worlds coming together. Sometimes they would sit there quietly as night fell. Reeves would say, "You know, if your people ever find out about this, they won't call it a miracle. They'll call it blasphemy." Arlana smiled faintly. "Then let them call it what they wish. I call it a beginning." She placed a hand over her heart. "What grows within me is not just mine. It is ours, born of two lives, two worlds." Reeves looked at her with quiet awe. "You were sent here as punishment. But maybe this was destiny." Her gaze softened. "Perhaps destiny wears the face of kindness." They sat together in silence as Eosiven's twin suns sank behind the dunes, their light blending into violet and gold. For the first time since her exile, Arlana did not feel lost. She felt whole, and in the quiet of that alien night, a faint heartbeat echoed within her, a sound no Viren had ever known. The soft wind of EO7 carried the scent of harvest. Fields that once lay dry now shimmered green under twin suns. The colony was alive and thriving. Human laughter echoed through the canyons, and every voice spoke with pride because they had built this world together. But at the center of it all, in a quiet home near the water fields, something greater had been built. Queen Arlana stood by the window, watching the sunrise. Her hands rested on the small cradle beside her. Inside slept a little girl with silver blue skin and soft brown hair. Her eyes, when open, glowed faintly with human warmth and alien light. She was living proof of what everyone thought impossible. It had been 1 full year since the storm that changed everything. In that year, Arlana had carried and given birth to this miracle child. The colony had become her family, protecting her when she grew weak. Celebrating when the child cried for the first time, Captain Daniel Reeves entered quietly, holding a small blanket. His hair was streaked with dust and sunlight. He placed the blanket over the child and smiled. "She sleeps deeper than I do." Arlana nodded softly. "She dreams easily, perhaps because she knows no pain yet." Reeves looked at her, his voice gentle. "She'll have a good life here. We'll make sure of it." Arlana's gaze drifted toward the horizon. "I wish that were enough, but my people must know the truth. They sent me away to mock me, Daniel. If they learn what happened here from others, they will twist it into shame." He frowned. "You're thinking of going back?" she said quietly. "It is time. The child belongs to both worlds. If I hide her, I only feed their hatred. But if I show her, perhaps I can end it." Reeves looked at her for a long moment. "You'll be walking into danger," Arlana smiled faintly. "A queen should walk first through the fire she expects others to cross." He reached out and touched her hand. "Then you won't walk alone. I'll come with you." Her eyes softened. "You are a soldier, Daniel, not a diplomat," he smiled. "Guess I'll learn on the way." 3 days later, the Viren flagship, Valus, returned to EO7, this time not as a ship of exile, but as a vessel of revelation. The colonists gathered around the landing pad as Arlana, Reeves, and the small child boarded. Many cried quietly. The queen promised she would return, though no one knew if that was possible. The ship lifted off, leaving behind the gold-red clouds of the human colony. Inside the cabin, the child rested peacefully in her mother's arms. Reeves sat across from them, watching the endless stretch of stars. She doesn't seem scared at all. Arlana smiled. She has never known fear. That is the difference between the world she was born in and the one she will enter now. He looked at her thoughtfully. You think your people will accept her? They will have to, she said, because she is living proof that everything they believe about purity and perfection is false. When the ship entered orbit above Prime, Arlana felt her heartbeat quicken. The planet below looked the same, shining towers, white clouds, and silver oceans, but it no longer felt like home. The Viren Council had received her transmission requesting audience. They had agreed, though many suspected mockery behind their acceptance. After all, the Barren Queen was returning. The landing bay was silent when the ramp lowered. Dozens of nobles stood waiting, their robes glittering with wealth. At their center was Counselor Velar, the same man who had sent her away. He smiled coldly. Majesty, I did not expect to see you again. Arlana walked forward, her posture calm but firm. Reeves followed behind her, carrying the child wrapped in a soft white cloth. The crowd murmured at the sight of a human stepping onto their sacred floor. Velar's eyes narrowed. You bring one of them here? To our world? This one saved my life, Arlana said. And gave me back what you stole. The council members exchanged confused looks. What nonsense is this? Arlana turned toward Reeves. Bring her forward. He stepped beside her and gently uncovered the child. The hall went silent. Gasps filled the air. The baby's eyes opened, silver rings glowing faintly, her pupils round like a human's. She cooed softly, unafraid of the towering nobles. Velar's face twisted in disbelief. What? What is that? My daughter, Arlana said proudly. Born of two worlds? Human and Viren? This is impossible, one noble shouted. Our biology cannot mix, yet she lives, Arlana said. You called me barren. You cast me out to mock me. But this child is proof that you were wrong. I was not barren. I was surrounded by emptiness, your emptiness. It was humanity that taught me how to live again. Velar's voice shook with anger. This is blasphemy. You polluted the royal bloodline. Reeves stepped forward. Watch your words. Without her courage, half your sector would still be starving under your own greed. Gasps rippled through the room. No one had ever spoken to the council like that. Arlana raised a hand to calm him. Peace, Daniel. Let them see with their eyes what their hearts refuse to feel. She turned back to the council. This child carries both my essence and his. She was born from the bond between compassion and courage. If that is impurity, then your purity is worth nothing. The nobles whispered among themselves, but the hall's great door opened again. The High Oracle, an elder whose word even the council feared, entered slowly. Her silver eyes glowed brighter than the others. Bring the child to me, she said. Arlana hesitated, then stepped forward. The oracle touched the baby's cheek and closed her eyes. For a moment, the hall filled with soft light. Then she spoke quietly. The child is real. Her energy flows in perfect harmony, half of the Viren core, half of human life force. She is balance itself. Velar protested. She cannot be allowed to live. Her existence breaks every law. The oracle raised her hand. Silence. The laws were written to keep us blind. This child opens our eyes. Arlana bowed her head slightly. Then you understand why I returned. Yes, the oracle said. You bring a new beginning. Perhaps your exile was never punishment, but destiny. The hall erupted in murmurs again. Some nobles fell silent with awe. Others turned away in shame. Velar looked furious. You would let her rewrite the old order? The oracle's voice was calm. I would let truth rewrite it. That night, Arlana stood on the palace balcony, overlooking the silver sea. Reeves joined her quietly, holding the sleeping child. The sky shimmered with the soft glow of distant stars. Never thought I'd stand on an alien palace roof, he said with a small grin. She smiled. And yet you stand there as if you belong. Do I asked. More than most who were born here, she said softly. He looked down at the child. What happens now? I will not take back the throne, she said. Let the council rule their cold halls. My place is where life grows, on EO7, he smiled. But before we return, she continued, I must ensure this truth spreads. My people must learn that perfection is not in blood, but in unity. Reeves nodded. You've already changed them. You just don't see it yet. The next day, the Viren sent a broadcast across the stars. Every colony, every ship, every planet under their rule received the image of the Queen standing beside the human and the child. Her voice, calm and strong, filled the airwaves. Once, I was called Barren. My people laughed and sent me away to live among humans. They thought it a punishment. But humanity showed me what creation truly is. Not just life in the body, but life in the heart. They build not with pride, but with hope. They break, and yet they rebuild. They forgive even when there is no reason to. From them, I learned that to be alive is not to be perfect, but to keep trying. This child is our bridge. Let no world call her mistake. Let every world call her miracle. When the message ended, silence covered the Dominion. Across the Empire, citizens spoke her name with reverence. Even the proudest nobles found no words to challenge her anymore. A week later, Arlana and Reeves prepared to leave. The council offered her jewels and ships to stay, but she refused them all. On the day of departure, the Oracle came to see them off. You have reminded us of something we forgot, child, she said. That life is not built by power, but by love. Go where you are needed most. Arlana bowed respectfully. Thank you, Elder. When they stepped onto the transport, the people who once mocked her now watched in silence and awe. The engines roared, lifting them toward the stars. Reeves looked at her with a smile. So, back home? She nodded. Home. The place where hope grows in the dust. When they returned to EO7, the colony gathered to greet them. The settlers cheered as the ship landed. Children ran forward holding flowers. Arlana stepped out, holding her daughter high so everyone could see. This is not just my child, she said. She belongs to us all. To every hand that helped build this home, Reeves wrapped an arm around her shoulders, and the crowd roared with joy. The little girl reached out toward the sunlight, giggling as the wind brushed her tiny fingers. Her laughter echoed through the settlement, a sound that made even the toughest workers smile. That night, under the wide alien sky, the colony held a celebration. Humans sang, and Arlana joined them, her voice blending with theirs. Watched her, realizing that the Queen, who once stood alone in a palace of cold light, now stood among her true people. As the stars shimmered above, Arlana looked down at her daughter sleeping in her arms. You were born from two hearts, she whispered. May you teach both worlds to love as one. Reeves placed his hand over hers. And may she never forget where she came from. Arlana smiled.